Audio skulls all day.
The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab.
You can't have an opinion on something that you haven't even tried.
Exactly.
The merit scientist lab.
Hold on. I'm unprepared.
If there are 140, did you think RJ would have figured it out by now?
Is that what episode it is? Or is it 139?
I think it's
No, because we didn't do a show last week. That's why.
okay. I thought it was 140. Are you sure about that?
You can check.
You can do your thing.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 139 of the Mad Scientist Lab podcast. As always, it is I, RJ, the pizza guy, along with Jared, the visual mad scientist. Jared, say hello. And we are very lucky today to be joined by local Hayfield wrestling coach, Roy Hill. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Local legend, bro.
Local legend.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm gonna make you sound super nice in the description, man. Like you're like I was thinking about it as I was driving over here. I was like, how do I word this? How do I make it sound?
I tell people all the time, like that are kind of into martial arts and wrestling and everything, and I tell them all the time, like, one of the best wrestling coaches in all of Virginia is you, and because everybody that I talk to who would, like, I don't know if you know, I can't remember, Elder Ramos used to fight.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as soon as I said your name, he knew exactly who you were, and I was like, because I trained with him. He hasn't trained in a few months because I think his son wrestles too. So
yeah, he actually I saw him a couple weeks ago down in Virginia Beach, and he was on crutches. He had corrective knee surgery.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
But he was down there watching the son compete.
Yeah. It's crazy how those worlds clash. He whoops my ass.
I think that's the first time I've actually ever heard you say something like that in my life.
He knows Elder. If you see Elder, you be like, oh, okay. I get it.
It's fine. I mean, if he's a big swole dude, then I ain't gonna mess with him. It's like I'm at a point in my life where it's like, hey, just be humble with everybody. I don't want to be tossed around on the mat.
He's definitely someone you would want to bring in and hear his life story.
Yeah, actually, that is true. Yeah, because he does a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he kind of he told me a few years ago. So, ironically, I knew him when he was a competitor in high school, and then many years later, I ran into him because a bunch of former Hayfield wrestlers got together, unbeknownst to me, and did a GoFundMe page because I'm on van number 3. My first 2 vans all got over 70,000 miles on them.
I remember it was the burgundy one, right?
Yeah, that was the first
Dude,
one.
you know what's crazy?
Yeah.
I think I've seen this van too. All right. I wasn't an athlete in high school, but I know this van.
Oh, we know that.
Leave me alone. He knows that better than anybody. This guy saved my life like multiple times. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
So the first van was a burgundy one, and that got up in mileage, and it was about to die on me. And so I purchased another one, and that got up to about 275,000 miles on it, and it was
At least you make it worth it, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
it's very rare to see that kind of stuff nowadays, like on vehicles.
Yeah, most of the highway miles going to tournaments all over the country, and then so they got together, a bunch of Hayfield alumni, and they fundraised some money and got this current van I'm in, and they bought it from Elder Ramos. So he had I think he's doing something else now, but he had a business where he would run various swimming pool companies, and they would bring in those students from Europe to be lifeguards, and they would use these vans to shuttle them around to the various swimming pools. And so I think he got out of that business, so he had this van and a 15-passenger Ford van. And so these guys got together and bought it. And so I'm still driving now. That one's up to 266,000 miles. So
I don't think I've owned a vehicle that's ever been that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've had my car for 12 years now, and I've only got 95. I mean, I don't put a lot of highway miles on my car. I have before, but mostly local. When I was in the pizza business and everything, I did delivery and all that, and I lived down the street from Kingstown and whatnot. So I have about 95 on mine, but I'm about to do some work to it. I got all that stuff in my back seat. So, Coach, let me ask you, man, for obviously people that don't know you, you've been a wrestling coach for how long?
I just finished year 33.
33 years.
Yes.
And they were all at Hayfield, correct?
All at Hayfield. Yes, sir.
You've probably seen some shit, man. Like,
well, it was interesting. So as of June 30th, I officially retired.
All right, congratulations, Coach.
Congrats.
Hey, yeah. Cheers to Coach Hill, man. Cheers.
I
Yeah,
got
cheers.
water.
Well, it's all right. I'll be the only one. I'll be the drunk one by the end of the show. But seriously, Coach, congratulations, man. That's quite the accomplishment, man.
Well, it was the all at Hayfield. I started right out of college.
Okay.
21 years old, and some of the old seniors were 19. So.
Yeah, I got you.
But all at Hayfield, and so I just retired after 33 years, and I started the new job.
That's at Marymount. That's correct. Okay.
Correct. Starting a new wrestling Division III program at Marymount University over in Arlington.
That's awesome. How long do you plan on kind of doing that up there? Or are you just going to kind of go till like the wheels fall off, or yeah, no pun intended. I know we were just talking about the old vans and everything, but
well, my father told me a long time ago, you do it while you can.
Yeah.
So as long as the urge and the passion is still there, and if I'm having positive impact, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I think me and Jared, when I told him that you were willing to come over, and something that I had reached out to you initially is the impact that you've had a lot on the youth in this area, and probably other places as well. That's kind of like your motivation to give back and keep the kids straight, so to speak?
Well, I started this a long time ago, and I used to emulate what I thought were the outstanding coaches in the area, because I was always struck by the impact they had on athletes, not only on the field or on the mat, but in their lives. And I distinctly remember watching coaches that I came in contact with as a young man, how they would turn some people's lives around for the better.
Ooh.
Okay, that's true, man. Because I know you know me, and I was a little mischievous when I was in high school. And thanks for getting me out of suspension that one time. I do appreciate
got a question. Who was worse, me or him?
Ooh, boy.
It might be me, man. It's probably me, man. It's probably me. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have no shame in saying that. Like
I was just disruptive.
Well, I don't know. Well, I always tell this story to I've told it on this show, and I've actually told it to some people when I'm out and about, that when you were teaching us biology and everything when I was a freshman, and you were out of school one day and we had a substitute and everything, and I don't know if you remember this, but I walked up to the substitute because I think Mr. Alonzo Clyott had dared me. So yeah, a fine young man. Shout out to him. So I went up and I told the substitute that I didn't feel well, and I fell on the ground and I started convulsing like I was having a seizure. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Man. Okay. I remember it very clear as day.
Wow.
So, but I do remember this. I know you see so many students and everything, man, and that was so long ago. But I remember the next day when you came back, you were like, hey, can you stay after class? And I'm thinking, shit, I'm in trouble, rightfully so. And you said, Mr. Steinbacher, you said, if you want to, practice acting, and you said, I advise you join the drama team. And then you made me stay after and like clean up like the biology lab or whatever it was. Yeah. So I always felt like kind of bad. I was like, man, he's got too much stuff to deal with than my nonsense. So you hear that, Jared?
What?
I was a troublemaker.
I mean, I would not have convulsed.
Well, I wasn't like, no, I did. I'm trying to make it sound subtle, but I did. And even the substitute was like, you can leave. Like, he knew I was full of shit. He knew I was full of shit. And I was just like, so I like stood up, everybody staring at me. And I walked out and I'm thinking like, man, I'm going to get in so much trouble, dude.
Well, I've always said there's nothing on this planet quite as dumb and stupid as freshman boys.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least
that's true.
Well, that's cool with me, man. Yeah, a lot of just dumb. I'll tell you this, Coach. I was typically the person that says no, we shouldn't do this, but I would just go along with it anyway. I was like, oh well, I'm here. It's like 9-1.
So you're a follower, not a leader.
No, I'm a leader now, sir. Okay,
Okay.
Thanks to this man. All right, Thanks, Coach. No, but yeah, it's just like, oh, peer pressure. When you're a teenager. But I know I'm not you, Jared Smith, and I know I know I'm not. All the time.
That's partly because of him, wrestling and football. Like,
What got you into like the whole coaching mind? I know you were just saying like you try to emulate people and all that, but what made you decide you wanted to be a wrestling coach? And obviously you were a wrestler yourself, but you just wanted to keep it going and all that stuff, man.
Well, initially, I coached football, and then wrestling, and then baseball, and then in the summer, I used to coach the American Legion baseball team. So I was always on the field. I enjoyed, truthfully, when I was younger as an athlete, I would watch the coach show things, and then, whether it be a play or a technique or a strategy, and I'd get frustrated because the other kids weren't picking up on it. So I would be trying to show them what to do. So in some ways, I've always been a coach to some degree, trying to get people in the right place at the right time. Then later on, when I first started, the way I started initially was I went to VMI, Virginia Military Institute, right out of high school. And when I graduated from there, initially I thought I was going in the military.
Okay.
I thought that I would do, 4 to 6 years in the military, and then once I got out, then I would start teaching and coaching. That was my original plan. But while I was in school, I had too many injuries, too many surgeries, and so at that time, military was downsizing, so they were looking for any excuse not to bring people in.
Okay.
So I could not get in. So I was at the school working out. I had a brother who was a senior in high school right after I graduated from college, and he was getting ready for his upcoming football season, so I was up there helping him work out and was in the gym, and Hayfield had just hired a new football coach. John Tompkins was his name. And he saw me, and he heard where I had just graduated, and I guess he had some familiarity with VMI, and so he said, why don't you come in and help me out, coaching. And so the first year I was coaching the freshman football team and helping out with the varsity. And then when the season ended, the defensive coordinator, a guy named Dudley Johnson, was the wrestling coach. And he said, well, why don't you help me with wrestling? And actually, I went to him and asked if I could help out. He said, sure. So I was his assistant coach. And then when that season ended, I went on to baseball. So I was assistant for the first few years. Right. And then about after 3 years, Dudley Johnson moved up, became an administrator eventually. And so I took over the wrestling program. That's
awesome, man. Are you glad that worked out that way?
I'm definitely very fortunate.
Yeah.
In all these first couple of years, I had a bachelor's degree in biology from VMI, but I didn't have any teaching certification. So I was working in the school system, in-school suspension monitor, security, substituting while I was taking courses at George Mason.
Okay, I got you.
For graduate school, and I was fortunate again. We had a biology teacher that second year who her husband was military, and he got stationed somewhere, and she had to leave in the middle of the year.
Okay.
And they said, well, you got a biology degree. You can take over as a long-term sub. And that semester of a long-term sub sufficed as my student teaching, and so the next year I was full-time teacher. Cool. So, a lot of things fell into place for me to end up where I was.
No, I mean, that's good, obviously, and it's impacted both of us and, probably hundreds of students that have come, through the halls of Hayfield and all that stuff. As a coach, is there a time where you... How do I put this? Like, do you said you were getting frustrated a little bit. Is there a time, because I've always known you to be a very calm man. Okay.
Externally, that's external.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I have, but however, but I know that's like a part of the criteria and everything. Is there a time where you ever feel like you, hell, man, that you feel like you're you're letting your students down or your team down, or you don't feel you're doing enough?
Well,
Or-
I always said that once I took teaching and coaching as just a job, I was going to quit.
I got
When
you.
it wasn't a passion, where it wasn't something that I felt was making a difference. Because I saw, and everybody's seen those teachers who just teach as a job.
Mm-hmm.
They get there, bell rings, they do what they're supposed to do, and they're gone.
Yeah,
and
no.
there's no relationships built with their students. There's no mentorship or guidance or whatever. It's just a job, and I didn't want to be that person.
No, yeah, you don't want to be hollow towards it, especially when you have people who are coming of age and figuring out who they are and going through obviously a growing period in their lives.
But at the same time, you could be at the other end of the scale where you invest so much and you don't really get much back.
Yeah.
So initially I did have some situations where there were some athletes you're working with, and they do let you down because they're dumb teenagers.
Yeah, no, I got you.
They go out there drinking, or they do something, or quit the team or whatever, and you kind of take that personally.
Of course.
And I had a veteran coach tell me, he said, Roy, whenever you are shocked by what 16-year-olds do, then you need to get out of it, because you can never predict.
Yeah. Okay. That's falling on the floor, convulsing in front of a substitute. There we go. I mean,
So it can. I don't think any good coach hasn't at a few times said I'm done,
okay.
because it's definitely happened to me.
Well, I think that's awesome that you say that, because I mean, the way I view you, and probably Jared as well, and a lot of people. I mean, you're a hero to a lot of people, man. I think.
Oh, boy.
No, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to wishy-washy, man. But
Well, I can tell you what, when I pulled into your subdivision here, it brought back a lot of memories as I'm riding down. I'm looking at different streets and locations, and I'm thinking about some of the athletes I worked with, that I coached, that lived just in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it brings a lot, and that's when you start to realize, man, you've been around a long time. I just thinking back, and on many occasions, there was some kids that having some issues, and sometimes it may necessitate you going to their house, visiting with their parents, or with the athlete themselves, because they're not coming to school, or they're engaged in something they shouldn't be doing, and they need to know that, that I know what's really going on.
I got you.
And so, there's a risk anytime you're trying to form relationships with people. You've got to kind of open yourself up.
Yeah, no.
Because, as you well know, particularly teenagers, kids in general, they know if you really care or not.
Yeah.
And, something I definitely believe in, somebody told me a long time ago, that nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And so if you're just telling somebody to do something because it's going to make him stay on the team and help your team win, that kid doesn't care about that. If you don't have their genuine best interest at heart, they're not going to give their best.
Yeah, reciprocate.
And they're not going to reciprocate. And, you have to be, as a coach, you really got to kind of put your ego in check. And a lot of coaches can't do that. And ultimately, no matter how successful they become, it will come back and bite you.
Yeah.
Because inevitably, those people will know that you're not really there for them. You're there for some other
reason or whatnot.
Your own reasons. Yeah. I mean, I obviously don't have the extensive coaching background you have, but I do get to coach jiu-jitsu and some MMA here and there. But that made me think about what you were saying earlier about seeing how certain people are showing a specific technique, and then nobody's understanding it, and that kind of is the same thing I think about. Trying to break down things so people understand the concept, as far as instead of just what the technique is. And I don't think a lot of coaches, like you were saying, even think that way. Like, all right, how can I make it best for this individual? It's just like teaching, I guess. Like, how can I make this particular thing get through to this person?
Well, you talk about somebody who's a great coach. You talk about somebody like Tony Dungy.
I love Tony Dungy.
And his tree of his assistants that have gone on to be head coaches is quite extensive. And one thing Tony Dungy always says is that he will hire assistant coaches who are great teachers, because coaching is just teaching on the field, teaching in that open environment. And so that's what it is. And so, in the classroom, some students are visual learners, some are auditorial, some are kinesthetic. They have to touch and feel and move around. So you have to figure out what works best, and what works good for student A may not work for student B. And it's the same on the field, the same on the wrestling mat or on the court. And some coaches, from my experience, they have such an ego that they teach it in such a way, and they don't want anybody else coming in trying to instruct that athlete, because it diminishes from them, and that's sad. So, as a coach, one of the things I always do is try to get athletes exposed to many different coaches, as many different techniques, strategies as possible, because, I may say the same thing as somebody else, but the other person puts it in a term or puts it in a way that they relate to. And, you see the light turn on.
Yeah,
So,
it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right?
Yeah, it is. So, otherwise everybody could just sit down and pull up something on YouTube and watch whatever and learn anything. Yeah, and that's not the case.
Yeah, that's a lot of in the jiu-jitsu world now. That's a lot of what's going on. People are just going on YouTube and thinking they can just go on the mat and do that same thing. I'm like,
no. That's first of all, if it's like, hey, I think I'm going to practice mixed martial arts or whatever the case is, let me watch it on YouTube, and then I'll go out and do it. No, I would never.
I mean, these are people who they watch this stuff and they continually train. Like they go to class and.
Okay. I thought it was just like somebody like me, some Joe Schmo.
I mean, no, there are people who do that.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me.
Probably those ninth graders.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, you'd be surprised. So people develop at different rates. And that's one of the things real interesting about dealing with high school students is that there'll be some freshmen, for instance, who got, facial hair on their chest, and they, muscular, and they, they're pretty physically advanced. And another freshman doesn't have a hair on his body. It hadn't even begun puberty. And so the student who's more physically advanced is going to get more attention, more accolades, and for a while, maybe a few steps ahead of everybody else. But you look 3 years later, he's still at that same level, where the other kid who started puberty late and started developing later has shot right past him. And even out of high school, I've seen kids go off to college or wherever, and they come back, he's like, wow, he grew this many inches or filled in, or things start to click, and, they're at a whole nother level. And so I even now I'll be in the wrestling room, and some guy will come in, and he's all of a sudden, things start to click for him, and he wants to do MMA or something, some kind of combat sport. And he says, oh, I hear you're a good wrestling coach. I need you to teach me how to wrestle. I'm like,
too late.
Well, wrestling is nothing you can just go in and pick up in a few lessons. I mean, it takes, depending on, your kinesthetic awareness, but it can take a long time. I mean, I learn something every day, even after 33 years. So
I think that's awesome. And that's probably what keeps that passion alive for you as well. It's like, oh, there's still more. You know what I mean? So I think that's an awesome thing. Now, I wanted to ask you, obviously, a lot of time has passed since me and Jared have obviously been in high school.
Some more than others.
Yeah, well, that's you, sir. That's you, sir, not me. But my graduation day was 2 weeks ago, and that was what, 15 years ago. I can't even believe that. I graduated 15 years ago.
That's cute.
Thanks. Jared's like, well, I graduated 35 years ago or whatever.
That long ago.
So obviously the last couple of years with the pandemic and everything that happened, I know it impacted schools, teachers, and especially students. How did that affect you teaching, and did your students behave differently? Was it obviously it's harder to teach them and this and that? I mean, what was like your mindset during that time, or before people were allowed back into classrooms and all that stuff?
Well, it's interesting for some students who are very social. It was devastating.
Yeah.
They're not getting the feedback, the interaction with the other students, the interaction with their teachers, and some kids just kind of withered emotionally, psychologically, and did not do well at all. Some other kids who are more, I guess, I don't know what the term you want to use. I'm not going to say antisocial, but
introverted.
Yeah, more introverted.
There we go. See, Jared, you're around for a reason, man. Coach is over here telling kids like, "Hey, man, you don't say shit."
Well, so those students, and they didn't, some of them did fine. In fact, I know some students that did much better. Now, some of that was due to the fact that academics had to be watered down.
Okay.
We didn't cover as much, not as much detail, and teaching to a screen. I can tell you what. So, as a teacher, at least in our county, we could not require the students to turn on their cameras.
Okay.
So, you see an icon, they're there.
Yeah.
You're asking questions, trying to get and God knows what some of them were doing. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting when school came back in person after over a year or so, and I asked questions in front of the classroom. It was like, you hear crickets, nothing. And
everybody's probably so disconnected, man.
Very much so,
man.
Very much so, or used to just. Oh, I'm hungry. Let me go to the kitchen and get something to eat. Yeah. Oh, I got to use the bathroom. Go to the bathroom or whatever, and trying to learn those social graces again. And you think about it with some kids who were maybe in elementary school, maybe in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
After they come back, they walk into a high school. They're freshmen.
Mm.
Yeah,
that would be traumatic. That would be.
Yeah, that's I actually didn't think about it like that in that sense, because one of my staff members when I was running the Papa John's in Kingstown, he came from Pakistan. Came over, spoke very little English, had to adjust. Worked with him for years, and he didn't get to attend his graduation because of COVID. And I was so, as somebody who obviously kind of was mischievous and grew up and had great guidance from you and other teachers as well, I eventually became somebody who was speaking to youth, because a lot of my younger staff worked inside with me and a lot of the older guys were delivery drivers. So I would have some of them come in and they'd be down in the dumps. So their girlfriend broke up with them and this girl doesn't like me. Oh, my boyfriend broke up, all that extra stuff. And it's like, and they're talking to me. It's like, well, in order for me to be a good boss, or just a decent person, it's like, oh, let me listen to them and hear them out, because finding staff, and especially the food industry with COVID going on, and it was very difficult for me. But he couldn't attend his high school graduation, and I, for one, personally would or prom or do the normal things. You know what I mean? I obviously I did my graduation. I didn't go to prom. I didn't really care for that. But it's like, man, these are like the very small things that these kids are never going to get to experience. And I felt terrible. It's like, man, you're not going to get to walk across stage and have that sense of pride. Like, hey, I made it with a, even
with the skin of my teeth.
Yeah. Well, that was me as well. Even Miss Bell, even when she gave me my diploma, she said, "You're lucky you have this." And I was like, "Thank you, ma'am." I'm sitting there, my family's clapping for me, and I'm thinking, I was like, "Oh my God, I feel like such a horrible human being right now."
I remember I still have it's in my mom's house. I have the picture of me walking across the stage.
No, I have mine upstairs in my room. It's crazy. My sash, actually, as I'm shaking Miss Bell's hand, falls off. So it's wrapped around my arm in the photo when I'm shaking her hand and everything. So I don't even look. I look nice, but the sash that went around my neck literally slid off as I'm taking the picture. So it's wrapped around my arm in my diploma photo. I still have my diploma too, man. I keep it upstairs. I keep it in my closet with my other things.
It's just a piece of paper.
I know, but the sense of pride that you get when you walk across it, I just felt bad, so I was like, hey man, let me do this for you. You know, I got him a card. I gave him a little bit of money to go buy something nice. You know, I was like, go buy yourself some shoes, you know, or whatever the case is. But it's it just stinks, man, because kids are being deprived, and you know, technology has advanced a lot nowadays. I'm sure.
Well, we're back now, so.
Well, we're back, which is good, thank God. All right, because even I was getting a little.
Well, I can tell you
antsy.
we're back, but I can tell you it was crazy. It was absolutely. So you got kids who were not around their other kids, so they don't know how to disagree.
Yeah.
They don't know how to have conversations.
And depending on what's going on in their house.
Oh yeah, and you know.
That's a big thing. That's very big thing.
Don't know how to ask questions, and so social interaction issues were quite severe. And then you got to throw in social media.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had to actually take the doors off the bathrooms because there was something going, Instagram challenge of some sort, where they would, you know, tear up the bathroom. They're tearing soap dispensers off the wall, or punching, you know, holes in the roof, or tearing off, you know,
All for the likes.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and that's something that I'm really concerned with, you know, watching, is that when kids interact with each other, or if they see a new situation, their first mindset is pull out their phone
And record it.
take a Snapchat of it or something, and see how many likes they get. And so what happens is the other kids, they're looking at their friends, you know, eating this food at some restaurant, or whatever these things. They're having so much fun, and I'm just living this boring life. And so the incidences of teenage depression has gone way up, and
Yeah, unfortunately.
other kinds of things. It's not been positive. It has not been positive. So the behavior issues, I felt so bad for the administrators at the school. They just constantly were out putting out fires all day long.
That's a shame, because I know obviously times have changed. Social media is its own entity at this point, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, whatever platform.
We know what social media is.
Yeah, I'm aware. All right, I'm just giving examples.
Okay.
That's all. I'm allowed to give examples. All right.
We're in a day and age where everybody know, well, if you don't, then I don't know what to tell you.
No, but I think about it sometimes, and even when I was working with some of my high school students, they'd be on their phone. If it's not busy, they'd be on their phones. They're taking pictures. I was like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, I didn't do stuff like this.
No, it's an actual addiction. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. I've had students where, you have to take their phone from them because they're not paying attention. You know, even if they put it down, face down on the desk, it'll vibrate or light up. They get reflex. They snatch it up. And I've seen them actually have anxiety attacks for taking the phone away and put it on my desk, or put it, where they can see it, but they can't get to it. And you see sweat popping off of them. And,
oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness. It's like it's
Withdrawal.
actual addiction. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary.
That's one thing. Like when they have those documentaries, like what was the last one? So the social media dilemma on Netflix.
Yeah,
I can't watch those because I deal in the marketing and web world. So like I see this stuff all the time, and it's just like I can't. I don't want to watch something that's gonna upset me even more because I know how scary this whole situation has gotten, and I don't think people are talking about it enough.
well, because everybody's in their phone. That's why.
Well, it is. It's interesting. So, talking about those vans. So, the second van I got kind of upgraded. It had TV in it, and
Oh, hell yeah.
VCR and DVD and all that, and they would watch it while we were driving on the road to tournaments and what have you. And so when I got this last van, it's just a 15-passenger it's not a conversion, just a 15-passenger van, and so it's just a van. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to need to spend money and put a screen in it or whatever. No, because now we're going on trips. Everybody's got their own headphones. They pull out their phone, they pull up their Netflix account or their Hulu account or whatever, and they're watching videos. So you got 10 guys in there watching 10 different things, not interacting with each other. Driving to St. Louis, I'm pointing, there's the arch. Driving on Mississippi, there's Mississippi. No, they don't even know, don't care. So it's a different world. It's a different
Yeah,
world.
because I know when we were in school, obviously the whole cell phone thing was kind of becoming a thing at the time.
That was a part of being in sports, though. Like the trips on the bus. Like,
I was actually going to say something about that. Yeah, you're interacting with the boys. You just won the tournament, or you just lost the game, and and everybody's kind of in their own world. It's like, hey, to cohesively work as a team, we need to communicate. You know what I mean? And so,
I did one time. We took a long trip up to Minnesota for a tournament.
Minnesota.
And so I took all the cell phones. I said, call your parents, tell them we'll be there at such time. Turn your phone off. I collected it in the bag, and I was going to keep it because I was determined I was going to try to defeat this monster, this social media monster. And it worked for a while. And then when they get there, you got to give them the phones back, and they're back in their own world. So I have seen some coaches do that. They collect the phones, they give it to them for a certain period of time, and then they collect them. Parents know, and I've seen where a mother told her son that if he could go a certain period of time without a phone, she would get him something he really wanted. I forgot what it was. And so he did it.
Yeah.
And he went like a month without a phone, and so when the month was over, he didn't want it back. He found his life was actually enriched from interacting with his family or his friends, talking, and not being, a prisoner to that cell phone. So I think we're going to have to do something. I don't think it is a positive use of technology.
No, especially in the classroom, because I know we weren't allowed to have phones. But isn't the
we
county?
didn't have phones when I was in school.
Well, that just shows Jared's age, folks. Right? You're the youngest one
pagers,
here.
if we were allowed to have a pager.
Oh, boy, you're really going back in time.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, well, so the school system is pretty much giving up on that fight. So I can remember teaching when the pagers were out. That was a big deal. And, it was associated with drugs and
everybody
whatever.
thought you were a drug dealer.
So you couldn't have them. Yeah. It's been 25 years since there's been a payphone in the school. So, So it went from the pagers and then the cell phones. And so initially you could not have your cell phone at all. It had them in your locker. And then they had some incidents where kids were breaking the lockers, stealing them, what have you. So you could have them, but they could not be seen. You had to put them out, keep them in your pocket or whatever. Then you could have them, but you couldn't have them on. So you could have them on your desk. Now you can have them on, but you can't use them during instructional time. Now you can have them on in instructional time if the teacher's directed you to use your cell phone instead of your computer, because students now have computers. So really, truthfully, there is no reason now for students to have a cell phone in school, or at least in class, because they do have a computer. But the battles you would fight with their parents, and this was I find interesting, it's the parents that do more complaining than the students. So, very well if your kids in school, you should not be texting them, asking them what they want for lunch or things like that. I mean, it should be for emergency. I went to the cafeteria.
Only. B-lunch. All right. B-lunch. All right. There we go.
It should be for emergency only. But what had happened was administrators were taking phones, or teachers were taking phones and giving them to administrators, and parents were marching up demanding to get the phone back because they can't get in contact with their kid during the school day. What has changed?
It's different to say the least. But do you think, unfortunately, with the violence that has been occurring in schools, that the parents might have that anxiety of something potentially going bad?
Yeah, I could see that. But boy, as a parent, if you get that call, what can you do anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a horror. I mean, that's something that's changed too.
It's hard to get into school anyway if you don't have access to.
It's locked down. But I mean, I hate to say it, but every teacher nowadays thinks they're looking at certain students, wondering, is that could be the one? Or they're thinking, if that announcement comes on the PA, lockdown, 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 how am I going to react? what happens if I hear bombs exploding or bullets flying? What am I going to do? You're looking around. What's your avenue of escape? How can how can you get out the back door? I mean, who would think that teachers would be thinking about that? But
No,
I don't know one that doesn't, and that's sad. That's really sad.
We agree. It's not something that we've talked about in depth on the show, but obviously you working for the county for so long, and being a teacher and a coach and all that stuff. Obviously, with the times changing, the mindset, we're going to keep evolving and this and that, and you being around for as long as you have, I mean, you've probably seen it all. You're just talking about the pagers and the payphone.
Well,
and all
I can remember the DC sniper. Oh my goodness!
I actually remember that. I was in this is actually a year before when I was in middle school, before I went over to the high school side.
What year was that?
It was in 2003. 2002 or 2000. No, my dad was still with me. So it was, I would say it's like 2002. Cause I was in, I started in 2001, at Hayfield, 7th grade. And then September 11th happened like a week after we started school. Mm-hmm. And then, we had so it was a year later. So 2002 is, I believe.
I was on the Marine Corps for all that.
But when that was happening, growing up in Lorton, I had my bus stop with the 6-7 guys on my corner, and everybody's saying, look for the white box truck and all this, and there's one literally right parked across the street, and I'm thinking, guys, like, what if this is it? And, and somebody's smoking a joint.
Back of a car.
It turned out to be a car, but initially they were like, it's a white box truck. Yeah. Okay. And there's one literally parked right across from our bus stop, and we have that like one tree on the corner, and we're all kind of huddled around it doing this, and it's like, damn, they want us to go to school, and motherfuckers out here just shooting people up, dude. But we went to school, we went about it, and even one day, a couple weeks into it, the van was still sitting there. So my dad called the non-emergency number, and he was just like, hey, I don't think anything's happening, but this has been sitting here and it's been all over TV, like if you want to check it out kind of thing. And then fortunately we found out, or not fortunately, but we found out it was out of the back of a trunk of some sort of vehicle and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that it's evolved into the classroom with teenage depression, people that are getting picked on. But when I was smaller,
bullying's always been a thing.
I know that. I understand that. I mean, I'm sure I've been bullied. I'm sure we've all been bullied or something in that case. And there's ways to obviously handle that, or at least when we were growing up. Nowadays, the first thing is like, oh, I don't like you. I can't have an adult conversation with you, or I can't vent any other way.
Go online and say
something. Create threats, obtain a weapon somehow, you know what I mean? And then just take it out on people, because you're angry. I've been angry about a lot of things in my life. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. So, teaching at the same school for 33 years, but then also, keep in mind, I actually went to the school there for 4 years as a high school student and 2 years prior to that as a middle school student. So that's all 39 years essentially in that building. And in that time, I've seen a lot of things change. And, you talk about bullies, and everybody's dealt with them. My father was kind of old school because we had a bully and came home crying, and he's like, said, go back out and deal with it. Said, don't come back till you do. Yeah. So that's what it was. But, I mean, there was never a thought of going and, shooting somebody or something like that. But, and even back in those days, it was common to see in the parking lot, some of the guys had trucks with shotgun racks with rifles in the on the school. Nobody thought nothing of it
because they hunting and
so something has changed. I mean, when was Columbine? Was that 99 or 2000?
No, it's 99.
99.
I was in the 4th grade, I believe, when that happened.
Yeah, I remember this. That when that happened, and I was like just stunned. And I never forget. It's kind of funny. It's sad, but I remember we had 2 kids that were managers on the football team, and they were, I guess you kind of classify them as techno nerds or whatever, and they were big into paintballing. That was big back in then. Anyway, so one day after school, they're somewhere doing paintball out near the woods, out near the Coast Guard station.
Yeah, yeah.
Down the road. Well,
That's not a place you want to do that.
and somebody called the cops because somebody's, running around with paintball guns. They look like real guns, and they're kids, and that Columbine's fresh in their mind. So these kids can be bopping up Telegraph Road towards the school, and about 8 cops swooped in on them and drew down on them, and the poor kids almost passed out. I can imagine. But, that's just the difference in the time. So,
yeah, I remember when I was I went to Saratoga Elementary. I remember when I was in the 6th grade, there was a young man who brought his BB gun to school. He had it in his backpack and everything. He was in the classroom next door to me because this is before we had, multiple teachers, me going from my locker to class, you had your one designated teacher. And I remember I got my teacher passed out a note to every student, like a letter, and I'm thinking what is this for? And so I opened it and said, unfortunately, we were aware that a student had brought a weapon into school, this, and that, and it turned out to be this. So they expelled this student, unfortunately, and he wasn't a bad student at all. I mean, I knew him vaguely, but they had to expel him because it's a weapon on school property, and it was such a big deal. I mean, they were literally passing letters around to every classroom, this, and that, say, unfortunately, we've had to expel this student because of this, and that, and but we're talking about just a BB gun, man. You fire a BB gun, a paintball gun, or whatever, but bringing it into the classroom, even then, some people were just like, on edge. It's like, oh my God, like that's kind of crazy. Now people just, they do wild shit.
The ironic thing is that there was a time in school where there was rifle teams. Mm-hmm. Like there would literally.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. They had rifle teams, and actually.
I feel like I didn't go to school at the right time now.
I think one school still has one. I want to say Robinson. I think still has one.
Maybe.
But yeah, swimming and rifles was a thing back.
Well, I know swimming was a thing. But a rifle team, no. I mean, what is it? Just like
you had archery too.
Archery.
Archery was a part of PE class.
Yeah, I remember. That was fun. That was
So you did archery in PE?
Yes.
That's pretty dope, man.
I mean,
I give you a lot of shit for being
plastic
112.
they were weak bows, but it still did the job.
Yeah.
Man, I remember going to PE, and obviously I wasn't an athlete. However, I think the coolest thing, because I was always into basketball and everything. I got to play in
the parachute.
No, oh no, hey, the parachute's cool too, man. Come on, just ride it up and then just ride it down. And then if you were really cool, you would run underneath and try to get back before it came back down.
Thank you.
Okay,
we all played the same game.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's cool. No, but I was really into basketball, so I got to play on the intramurals team in 8th grade and all that. And, stay after school. That was like my really first after school activity that I was like really a part of, and I had a blast doing it. And then the one thing I did hate the most, and I'm sure most people do, is I hated running the mile, obviously. So what I did, I think it was my 10th or 11th grade year, I was like, you know what? I want to get a good time on the mile this year. So I'm serious. So for like a week, because I lived in Lorton, I would, the top of Pohick Road, I'd jog down to the Gunston Plaza, and then I'd jog back up. And it
took the biggest hill in Virginia.
Yeah. So, I was like, if I'm gonna get ready, this is the way to do it, right? Yeah. So I did it for a couple days, for a week and a half or so, just to try to build some breath up, right? And I got a pretty decent time on the mile that year, and that's like the one time I truly felt accomplished in PE. I got like 7 minutes and some change, which I think is a reasonable time.
You know what?
For the mile.
Didn't prepare. I tell you what, that mile doesn't prepare you for shit, because I remember. Okay, so we had to do the mile in school, right? And then from that, and then when I went in the Marine Corps after that, the test was 3 miles.
Did you hate life? You probably did.
I went from walking a mile every 6 months or however often they do it, all the way up to running 25-minute 3 miles, like within a matter of 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't run 3 miles anymore though. Nor do I want to.
No, I was gonna say, if you got to be really motivated to want to do that. Isn't there a guy that just like walked across like the U.S. or something like that?
A bunch of people who do. There's people
I
who
know
do
that's like a
100-mile races, 200-mile races,
or like a 24-hour mile race.
It was funny. It's talking about how things have changed. So I can remember very distinctly when I was in high school. when you went to PE, after you went to PE, part of your grade you had to shower. You paid, I think, $5 a year or whatever for towel service. You
Okay.
get clean towels, go in, you had to shower and come back. And if you didn't shower, you get points taken off and so forth. And
They didn't want you to smell musty in your next
Yeah,
class.
exactly.
They're teaching you how to be a human being.
Yeah,
That's
no.
what-
Okay, well, that's a good point.
Nowadays, kids do not shower. The bathroom, you go in the bathroom, and if a kid's urinating, another kid walks in, he turns his back sideways. They're so concerned about somebody looking at them or seeing them. I said, if you go in the maybe the military changed. I don't know. I said, you go in the military, what are you going to do? Yeah. I never forget one time I walked in the locker room one time in wrestling practice, and the kid was showering in his underwear. And so, that's just how things
imagine walking around the rest of the day with soggy draws, man.
It's just how things have changed. So, nowadays, I think wrestling's probably the only sport that athletes shower because you mandated for skin disease issues. But other sports, football, they go in, they in the mud, now they're on the turf, but practicing, sweating, stinking, and they'll jump out and hug on the girl and walk on off. And so I just but
some of those pads were the worst smelling pads I've ever.
Yeah, but the difference is the permeated smell of Axe and other.
Oh no, yeah,
so,
smells like a terrorist attack in here.
So
spraying it around.
That's the funny thing.
I don't know what that
teaching freshmen, they're going through different stages of puberty and get to the point where their armpits are stinking and they're not used to it. Oh my God!
I remember a couple of those students. We weren't. At least when I was in school, we weren't required to shower after PE and all that stuff. But I do remember vaguely, obviously when I was younger, my dad teaching me, about deodorant and all this other stuff and whatnot. And you'd go in and you'd run into that one kid that just absolutely stunk, man, like really bad. And it's like, man, dude, are you okay? And you know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. It's like, bro, you
don't know what's happening at home, though.
No, and that's something that I've learned to understand. When you're in middle school, high school, you don't really have that mindset.
You're just in your own little world.
Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to figure out who you are, this, and that. But it's like, man, dude, I went to go work at another location when I was still making pizzas, right? I was helping out. This was when I was still an assistant before I became a GM. So they had me bouncing around, helping out understaffed places. And I worked off at a store off of Route 1. Obviously not the nicest area, blah, blah, blah. A delivery driver came in there. Super nice guy, but he had probably the worst BO I think I've ever smelled in my life. And he would walk around like nobody said anything to him.
Shit. I was
And
like, hey, bro,
nobody said anything to
take
him.
a shower, man.
And so my supervisor comes in, check on me, and he said, "Hey, RJ, how's it?" And I'm not these people's boss. I'm just there to help, but I'm kind of overseeing what they're doing.
Isn't that kind of like a
health code violation? Yeah. So that's where I'm getting. That's where I'm because I handle food, man. Like we all eat it, but I don't want anybody nasty touching my food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to pull him in the office, and I said, "Hey, man, you stink." Right? And he looks at me. He said, "Do I?" I said, "Yeah." and I'm not trying to make a joke about this, but I was trying not to laugh at the same time. He was like, because he was dead serious. He's like, "I really smell?" I was like, "Dude, you don't smell yourself, bro." Like
after
really?
a while, no.
No, probably not. But he smelled, and I was like, "Look, you got to do this." And he was kind enough to do it. It dissipated slightly, but I've never been one to go up to somebody and be like, "Dude, you fucking smell."
Fuck
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I had to do that.
I'm telling
Now,
you.
if you stink, it's just like, all right, you know what? You personal hygiene is very important.
It's not just for me. It's for everybody's.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't the one complaining about it. It was everybody else that worked there. They're like,
Right.
"Hey, can you tell this guy he smells?" And I'm like, "Bro, I don't even work here. Like, I'm just helping."
I can tell you from looking at it from a viewpoint of an educator, and you made point of this already. You don't know what's going on at home.
Yeah.
And I never forget. I had a young girl in class. She had just come here from Africa. And I think, I'm trying to remember what part of Africa she was from, but they had a lottery system
Okay.
for her to get out of that country because they were embroiled in the Civil War.
Okay.
And so she had a relative in the United States who would sponsor her. So she was staying with this relative. Now he's a man and he got a teenage, person he's in charge of, and he probably didn't know anything about female hygiene and all that kind of stuff. And she didn't have the knowledge either, and so she was quite odoriferous. I'll put it that way.
That's the name of the. No, I was going to say that's the name of the episode. Odoriferous.
It may be.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, we kind of think about this stuff on the fly, Coach.
Still teaching. I never even heard that word.
Yeah.
So I went to another female teacher and asked if she could pull her aside and talk with her. And come to find out, she didn't have a couple pair of clothes. The teachers got together and they went out and got her, different products and got her hair done. Because she had nobody at home was going to give that to her. So, and then they talking with her, how high school kids are terrible. So, she knew that she was from Africa, so they're clicking there, doing all that kind of stuff and stuff. And so, and I got to talking with her, and she's seen people. Well, she said necklace, where in that country, if they didn't like you or you were in the wrong tribe, they throw tires over you and burn you.
So
she's talking about short arm or long sleeve or short sleeve, where they cut off your arm with machetes. And she saw all this. She saw women getting, bellies cut open and babies pulled out and what have you. And she's 15, 16 years old, and these other kids in the classroom were making fun of her and so what have you. So it can be tough. I mean, teenagers are a lot of times not very nice people.
Yeah. No, I know that firsthand, Coach.
Some of them continue that on to the rest of their life.
Well,
I've changed a lot. I'm a man of the community now.
That is funny though. Is so I'm at the point now where I'm seeing former students come back as parents or kids I coached against as athletes come back, and their kids are now in competition. And one thing I've seen very interestingly is the kids who were earnest, dedicated athletes, when their kids are involved in sports, they're the parents that sit up in the stands, they cheer, they applaud, good job, son or daughter, or whatever. The kid who quit the team, the kid that was, not really involved, he was kind of here and not there.
Yeah.
They're the crazy ones on the sideline, screaming, challenging the coaches, yelling at the referees. They're the ones that make the sport miserable for their own kids. And I'm seeing that now. So it's very clear.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of it that way.
So
it's funny you say that. So when I was in the 4th grade, I played for basketball was like my big thing. It's like I played football, but I went to a daycare center when I went to elementary school because my parents work early in the day. My dad, worked off of South Pickett Street. My mom worked for the government. So at 6 in the morning, I'm getting up, and they're taking me to daycare, and daycare would take me to Saratoga. So obviously we had our playground area. I mean, we played football, but, I mean, it was hard to play football because either the ball go over the fence, we'd have to go get it, or someone happened, But I strictly remember when I played for SYC, we played right here at Lane Elementary, on the weekends. And I remember the coach of the opposite team when he was yelling at these kids. I mean, I understand there. So let me ask you this. When do you think a coach crosses the line when you get like that aggressiveness, so to speak, like before it becomes demoralizing to an athlete or a student?
You can, and I said this before, the kids know it's the difference when you're yelling because of a lack of effort or execution, but you don't make it personal.
Yeah.
And you don't single out individuals. If you have to single somebody out, you got to pull them out, pull them aside, and whatever. Now, I have to say I've been guilty because you're human, you get caught up in emotion, and I have apologized to that athlete in front of the team that I got carried away, whatever, and they'll understand that. But some people go way past what is acceptable. And when you make things personal, or you don't give them the opportunity to redress, then that's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
And that's something I've had to learn, because as a young coach, you would emulate the older coach. And the old school stuff was snatching them by face masks or slapping them upside the head or whatever.
You can't do that anymore.
Oh,
that was the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do a lot of shit
the
anymore.
Stuff that was done, years ago would get you locked up today.
Oh, wow.
No doubt about it. And even in the locker room, things that you would consider just child's play or horseplay would now be seen as hazing or get you expelled or prosecuted.
Yeah.
And so
do you think that takes away from the development of the youth, like for them not to be like not say themselves, but to have that, like you were talking about, taking the phones and driving and having the boys and the band
there's
together?
got to be, so things have kind of gone full circle in many respects to discipline. So you're talking about the kid that brought the BB gun to school getting expelled. So it used to be a lot of different things where you crossed this line, you expelled, no question to ask. And it really, it kind of depends on who it happens to. So this is a circumstance, drugs.
Yeah.
So there were some kids, one of the schools on the other side of the county.
All right.
Where the people have a little more money and have a different skin complexion.
All right, I got you. I got you, Coach. I think I know where you're going with this.
And
get all the money over there.
So
I'm here with both of you. How does that sound? Okay.
So this kid gets, caught with marijuana or something, some kind of drug, and gets expelled. And what was the standard thing? What happened then when they would be out for a certain period of time at an alternative school, and then if they, took certain classes, like AA classes, and did whatever it was to redress the issue, they would let them back in after a year or after a semester, but they could not go back to their original school. So instead of going him to school A, they sent him to school B after a year. Well, he came back to school B, got depressed because he didn't have his friends around, committed suicide. His parents had the right connections. This happened with another kid, similar ilk. So now the school system has changed that.
Okay.
And so you get expelled out of school A, you do your time in the alternative program, and then you can come back to school A again.
Okay.
So things have changed, and it may be for the better, may not be, but, talk about how things change. It really depends on who it happens to.
So I'm going to self-incriminate myself here for a moment.
Again.
Yeah, it's all right.
This is an ongoing thing for him.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I mean, it's we're past the point of no return at this point. I'm just telling you. Put it this way, if I go to a job interview one day and I come to you directly and say, hey, they didn't hire me because of the podcast, I'll give you $100. Okay. So obviously when we were when I was in high school, growing up in the area I grew up in, drugs were very prevalent, mostly weed, and at the time, certain other drugs like ecstasy and this and that. The people I kind of grew up with, some of them are doing very well now, doing a lot better, and some of them are in jail or I don't know where they are. And as the white guy, in growing up where I was, I sometimes had my run-ins with the law, being stupid or whatever the case is. And sometimes I felt, I'll give you a very good example, Coach. I was probably in my junior year. I was outside and I was drinking a 40. All right. I was drinking a 40. I'm dead serious.
To the point.
What I'm telling you is, so I'm drunk. I'm in high school. I'm drinking.
Next thing you're gonna be like, yeah, it was a St. Ives, and it was approximately halfway full.
Yeah. Well, I finished it. Put it that way.
Okay.
So I'm walking to my house. I get into my house, and my buddy called me. He said, "Hey, who lived right behind me." He said, "Hey, we're right around the corner." All this other stuff. So I walk out of my house. My mother obviously starts giving me a hard time. It's late at night. Blah, blah, blah. And she's yelling at me to come back. I'm not listening because I'm a drunk teenager, obviously. And coincidentally, a couple doors down at a friend of mine's house, there's a Fairfax County police officer knocking on their door for whatever reason. Nobody's home. And he notices me walking away from my mom. And he starts talking to me. He said, hey, man, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't listening to him. So my dumbass I approached this police officer in a kind of a threatening manner. Like I'd like walk up to him like I'm gonna do something to him. And you know me, man, I'm still thin as a twig. You know what I mean? This guy spins me around, slams my head on the back of his cruiser, and he starts patting me down. He's like, "Hey man, you got any weapons on you?" Blah blah blah. I'm like, "No, no, no." He puts me in cuffs. Okay. And then I'm thinking, man, like obviously in high school, I was like, man, he's gonna put me in the back of the car. I'm gonna get in trouble for like, you know, intimidating a police officer, all that. He actually walks me back to my house, takes the cuffs off, basically throws me in my front door and says, "Hey, man, listen to your mother." And I said, yeah, I'm like, all right, cool, blah, blah, blah. If that was anybody else in my neighborhood, they would not have been treated the same. And I personally mean that. Like, I really do.
I don't know.
I mean, it's possible, but in terms like white privilege,
if it was the same exact scenario, but it was a black kid, I don't think it would necessarily have.
I don't know, man. I'm just saying from obviously the things that we've seen and things how things transpire nowadays.
I understand where you're coming from, but I just feel like in that situation, because I grew up around here too, so I just feel like in that situation he was just trying to tell you like you need to be.
No, and I get that, but I just think about some of the other guys, not all of them, but some of the other guys that I grew up with. I'm thinking like, there's no way, man. Like,
well, they already know. I knew people who knew cops by name. I'm like, how do you know?
You guys are very fortunate living where we live, as far as the quality of policing.
Yeah,
is very high. Fairfax County is what people aspire to get to if you're in the policing business, and so.
I didn't know that actually. I actually did not know that.
And so they can take the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
If you're out in Hillbillyville somewhere, then they taking whatever they can get, and the outcomes may be much different. So.
Yeah, I never really thought. I honestly, Fairfax County is one of the richest counties in America. But in terms of like the law enforcement, the force, I never thought about it like that. Like people really gravitate towards.
You got to understand how the police process works. Like I almost was going to be a police officer, but then I'm glad I didn't. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, you act like one.
You have to.
I'm just joking. Calm down.
Hey, made me forget what I was going to say.
Sorry. Police force.
Going through the process. Like if a person's going through and for whatever reason, one department doesn't take them for whatever reason, they'll just go to another department and they'll just keep doing the same thing. So if you got one particular shitty person who couldn't make it to Fairfax, let's say, they'll go to one of the outskirts and just try to get in because they just want to get in. They don't care what they're doing.
Yeah. See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wasn't aware of that. But I just, in granted, a lot of the things that were occurring in my neighborhood, in my high school years, obviously it affects people. I feel like it was kind of at a peak at a certain point, people's homes were being robbed, mine as well. And, people were pulling out guns and just doing weird things. And, I've seen some just wild shit as a high schooler. And it almost affected me not to graduate. Believe it or not, I had to go down and talk to Mr. Stevenson. Yeah, I had to talk to that gentleman because I was missing a lot of school my senior year because my home had been vandalized, and I was so paranoid because it was happening when I was at school. It's obviously somebody in my neighborhood. I wouldn't tell my mother. I would go out to the bus stop. She'd leave for work, and I'd literally walk right back to the house because I was essentially waiting for somebody to come to my house.
What were you going to do if somebody did show up?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, obviously, I'm not thinking at the time. I got my little steak knife and all this stuff. Yeah, I'm dead serious. I really did this, Coach. And it was detrimental to my mental health and just my well-being as a high schooler and as a student. Like I made mistakes, but you still want to go to school, get an education, blah, blah, blah.
So that paranoia had nothing to do with using a little bit of a cannabis product. Right?
No, there was a lot of that. Sorry, Coach. This is why I want him to come over. But seriously, no, but I'm not lying. He's right. I would go home, I'd smoke a fat one, and I'd literally stare out my window for like an hour.
Bruh, that made it worse.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So regardless, I had missed a number amount of school days, and it's my senior year. I want to graduate. I'm ready to, move on.
You got 3 days before the end of school. I'm ready to graduate.
Yeah. So I had to go and I had to explain myself to Mr. Stevenson, who obviously was not popular with students because of his demeanor. And I just told him the truth. I said, hey, this is what's happening in my household. This is what's going on. And this is why I'm not here. He said, well, this is what I want you to do. He said, senior week, he said, nobody's going to be here. He said, you're going to be in every one of your classes and you're going to be sitting in there alone. And I did that. I literally went to every single class. I was one of two students. And I went in there and I would just read the paper, like literally, just so he would let me graduate. And I did relatively well if I applied myself. Obviously, if I didn't care about the class, I didn't care. But I had
turned into a therapy session for
no. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. That's what it's for. That's what the podcast is for. I was at the bar before he came over, Coach. I'm sorry.
But that explains it.
No. I'm fine. But I think what I'm kind of alluding to is like, if that kind of stuff happened nowadays, or it still happens, but certain people take it differently, and that's when they go into a school with a weapon and start doing, obviously, terrible things. And I never once had the notion of actually doing that. I just wish people would stop, messing with my stuff. You can mess with me, but you're coming into my house and you're taking,
Why
things.
didn't you alert I don't know, the police?
Well, I did, but I didn't know who was doing it. So, I mean, there's only so much they can do, to a certain extent. But that's kind of where I'm getting at, like the bullying and this, and that. And it leads kids, especially nowadays, to make rash decisions. I never once thought that way. I was just like, yo, just stop.
Well, I think a lot of it is just, people just emulating or copying something they see or hear about. So, for example, I remember a few years ago at one of the high schools on the other side of the county, there was a girl who passed out in school and said it was because of mold in the ventilation system. And school sent out all these experts to check the air and whatever, didn't find anything. And next thing you know, another. And so they said it was kind of like mass paranoia, you know. And the same thing happens, unfortunately, with suicides and that kind of stuff. So, I think the teenage mind tends to fixate or idolate on certain images or certain things. And I think this whole shooting thing may be similar, because I cannot believe there's more bullying now than there was any other time.
Yeah.
Actually, probably in some ways it's been addressed. Most school systems have something where they kind of take action to ameliorate or limit actual bullying. Whereas back in the past, it's like my dad back in the old days, he just pointed to go out and deal with it yourself.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that happening today.
No, then you're giving the, if you say, hey, go deal with it yourself, and then a young feeble mind's like, well, this is the only way I know how to handle it, and then they end up doing something crazy.
Yeah, so for us, it was you had to go fight.
Yeah,
a stick or whatever.
Yeah.
You
now
gotta make that clear.
Yeah, now it may be
shoot the fair one. Shoot the fair one. Yeah, shoot the fair one.
Yeah,
Huh?
it's funny.
No, I'm just saying, because a lot of people. So not to cut anybody off, but with shooting the fair one, it's like when obviously we had kids from neighboring.
What does it mean?
It means that when you fight somebody, you're fighting them like one-on-one. You're not. No, there's nobody jumping in, whooping your ass. Like some massive brawl, which unfortunately I've been a part of. But shooting the fair one is just like go out, handle your business, and then it's over with. Nothing more, nothing less.
Understood.
All right. Well, there's my definition. Is it sufficient enough?
I'm trying to get you there fast enough so we can understand what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know. I kind of draw things out, every little detail. Detail.
Well, what have you seen since you've been around here a while? What has changed in your local community, in the school community? I mean, construction, just think about, right down the street, you got this big shopping center, Wegmans and whatever that wasn't there.
Yeah, it was just a big it was just a big hill for a long time.
And, and so it's become, in a few years, it seems like D.C. will go from D.C. all the way down past Prince William County. Will be almost one city eventually. I mean, and so certain demographics are being pushed further and further out and further, and so it is causing some change, in some of the older neighborhoods as you go down by Lee District. Those old brick houses were built back in the 50s or so, and the original owners have moved on, and you got a lot of immigrants have moved in, multi-families living in those, and so the demographics of the school systems have changed. So I feel bad that kids living up and down the Route 1 corridor get painted with a brush that they're less than or not as good as some other areas. And I always said that if you took a teacher from the west end of the county, brought them over here, and took a teacher from the east end of the county and put them over there, the results aren't going to change. It's not the teachers any different. You're just dealing with different clientele. You're dealing with students where one area, their parents have graduate degrees and doctorates and whatever, and parents have certain expectations of the students' academic performance. At the other end, you got parents who are, both working several jobs and may not have much education, and they're struggling just to make it. And so it's not the kids are any different or teachers are any different. It's just the circumstances, and that has to be recognized. I just hate that people point fingers and talk about.
They make assumptions based upon nothing that they know personally.
Right.
That's something that I feel that in general needs to be practiced more, and not in terms of let's blame some, before you think before you speak. Do you know what I mean? And I think the biggest thing for me being a manager and all that, it kind of because I worked with people from all over the globe and different circumstances, so it even opened my eyes. It's well, this guy's never really seen this before, and then you got some of the other kids coming up oh, why are you treating it this way? It's well, you might not really get where I'm coming from, but this is what's happening and this is how I'm going to handle it, and if you don't like it, then you can come speak to me or whatever the case may be. But the circumstantial stuff, life happens, but we all try to collectively have to make a living and just
I think it would be great if after high school, kids had to go and do some sort of service, whether it be like a Job Corps, or whether they go to a military type of environment where they have to go away and where they have to encounter different types of people, different types of backgrounds.
I agree with that. I've always thought that, and a lot of people don't agree with it, but I always thought that everybody should at least do 2 years in the military if they can. I mean, I know that's how they do it in Israel. That's a whole
lot
different
of other countries they do something similar.
I think China's one of them. I'm not naming great examples of these, but
I was gonna say America. And it's the 4th of July weekend too.
No, some of the Scandinavian countries they do something similar where, I think it raises their perspective, increases their contact with different disparate population groups, and it breeds more understanding. If you just live in a certain neighborhood and that's all you see and that's all we're kind of fortunate in being in the D.C. metro area, and a lot of kids. It's interesting talking with students when they go off to college and they come back. They go to school like Hayfield is very diverse. You got all types of ethnicity, religions, etc. And they go off to some college somewhere where it's kind of monochromic.
Yeah.
And they looking around like, wow, this is weird.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize the diversity they took as typical. Other parts of the country, it's atypical.
Yeah, they don't know it at all.
And that's why it's interesting when we go on these trips with wrestling. We go to Iowa or somewhere like that. And those people looking at us like, wow, where are you from? Or,
what are you doing around here?
But it's anytime you increase anybody's contact with different people, it's a good thing.
No, I think that's the one. I don't want to say I don't think redeeming is the right word, but I think that's the one thing I enjoy about this area the most is the collective melting pot that the DMV is. Because I know, and we all know people from different, from everywhere. And I mean, I can go up to Brownsville, PA, where my grandmother lives, like right outside of Pittsburgh, old coal miner town. Even when I go up there and I go sit in the one little dingy bar, they're like, who the hell are you? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, we ain't seen you. And it's like, well, I'm visiting my grandmother. And they're like, who's your grandmother? And I tell them, and they're like, oh, okay, you're fine with me because she's lived there pretty much her entire life. And so it's different. Like, it's like a gift and a curse because you got people from all over the place, but people out here, they're kind of assholes, And if you go out to the country or wherever, just a rural area, so to speak, and people are more pleasant. They have a certain way of life. They have a routine. Where out here, it's just constantly spinning, all the time.
Yeah, not to talk about politics, but I think a lot of the political divide is really a cultural or social divide where you have people in the coastal areas basically are more, they move around. They're more exposed to different cultures, different societies. Then you go inland, and it's more homogenous, and people, they look at everybody else as an other.
Mm.
And that otherism really causes some problems. So that's something as a society we're going to have to address because it's causing a lot of problems that are unnecessary.
Yeah, there's a lot of unnecessary stuff going around. Just in general, and I know I was like, don't talk about politics, but the divide that obviously in the recent years that it's created, because obviously when we were younger, I've never really been super big into politics. I mean, it is what it is, but you have people, and me and Jared have discussed this, that end at this point in time, they end complete friendships, relationships because they have different opinions and they are not willing to talk about it. Like, it's like you're just stuck in one mindset. You're not willing to be open-minded and try to understand.
I think that's a big thing with, just like he was saying, with society in general, is people they want to argue their point, but they don't want to listen to the other person's point of view and try to at least understand it to get to a point where, okay, I understand where you come. I see where you're coming from. I'll meet you here type thing, compromise.
Yeah, that's something that I think has to be done. If it's not done in the home, then it needs to be done in the school. And, you got to have those type of debates and teach people how to have conversations, how to have disagreements without getting belligerent or getting physical or whatever, agree to disagree, but learn to listen, and they say even a fool is correct twice a day. He says 12 o'clock and it's not. Eventually, it's going to be 12 o'clock, So it doesn't cost you anything to listen. Doesn't mean you have to agree, but you should at least listen, and that would go a long way. And that's something, that's when I talk about this cell phone and this technology, this social media. There's no conversation. It's just this is it, and if you don't like it, I'll find a channel, or I'll find a podcast, or I'll find something that supports what I think, and that's all I'm going to listen to.
Yeah.
And I talk with students all the time, and I said, "Well, where'd you get that idea from?"
Joe Rogan's podcast.
They'll pull up something. I said, "Well, is this vetted?
Mm-hmm.
Is this information been peer reviewed?" And no, but the so and so. Well, that's his opinion. That don't mean that's what it is. But. Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a fact.
Yeah, and so that's not taught. People just make assumptions.
Yeah, and that assumption obviously is an idea,
so
and the idea grows.
I don't know if you remember. I used to do this in class. Probably shouldn't have, but I write the word assume on the board.
It's crazy. I actually think I do remember you doing this. Yes, I do.
And I say when you assume, you make a ASS out of you and me. So
I do remember that.
Yeah, so you remember that.
Coach Hill coming by, dropping the gems. That's right. Don't assume, folks, because you'll make an ass out of you and me. All right, dude. That should be the name of the episode. Assume. Yeah, we can do that. Our own little inside joke kind of thing.
Yep.
Coach, what I wanted to ask you as well, do you think certain things, I mean, I've heard it discussed over years and years, certain things should be taught in school, like the biggest example, like taxes and things like that. And do you think college obviously, it's in this day and age, it's not the only scapegoat. Is that something that you would support? Like, obviously, you're going to encourage your students or especially your athletes to go to a college to try to make something of themselves. But do you believe that's still the only avenue, or would you encourage somebody to go like, hey, you can get a trade job, go to a trade school?
It's when I was in high school eons ago, they had avenues for students who were not real strong in academics, but they could learn carpentry, they could learn bricklaying or pipe fitting and those kinds of things. And, the school system had the idea they want to push everybody to the collegiate track. That started of all, there used to be gifted and talented programs and honors, and then AP and all these things, and IB and that kind of, which is great. But, I mean, we have all this technology, but you still got to have somebody run these wires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somebody got to get those, get that plumbing system working. You build a house, you still got to lay brick and all. So, and those, if I remember I had a plumbing issue a year ago, it was $100 when that guy walked in the door. Whether there's anything wrong or not, $100, and then a bunch of dollars an hour after that. So he was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those jobs are out there. But college needs to be in some way more affordable.
I think.
Well, the reason I say that, because I can remember when I was in school, and we're talking about way back in the 80s, I could make enough money in the summer to at least pay tuition or pay a good chunk. Now, money you make in the summer, you might be able to afford your books.
Yeah,
books are very expensive.
So you're not going to make a dent into what college
your
costs.
loans.
So the rate of college cost of college gone up much, much faster than what you get paid.
And the wages,
else.
the wages haven't budged.
Yeah, so something's got to be done. But I mean, there's definitely benefits, and to me, a lot of the benefits, there's academic benefits, but to me, a lot of it is, again, what we just talked about, going out and getting exposed to different people, different ways of thinking, different ways to approach issues, learning how to learn. And what you learn is not as necessarily important as it is that you learn how to interact and how to find a way to fit in.
Yeah, I got you.
And so that's very important.
No, because when I went to Nova, I did 2 semesters there before I started working full time and all that other stuff. But like you guys were talking about the cost of books, and I was only taking a very small handful of classes. I wasn't doing like extra. I was taking like 4 classes. And I went in to get one book. It was probably maybe like this thick. And it was like $150.
Oh, they're way more expensive now.
No, yeah, I don't want to know. But I was just thinking, it's like, man, like I'm gonna end up returning this. Do you know what I mean? Like, or it's $150 for knowledge or something that is required for me to learn this actual curriculum that I'm studying or whatever the case. I've always put it this way: it's like when you go into a job. And this might be a bad example, but it's like, oh, hey, you're our employee here. Do you need work shirts? It's like, well, yeah. It's like, well, you got to pay for them. It's like, why? I work here. Do you know what I mean? But I know that might be like a bad example, but I just think it's kind of nuts how it's like, hey, I paid to come here. Okay. Shouldn't you provide me with some of this stuff for me to learn and, extend my knowledge?
No, what that is, you grew up in the public education system, and you're assuming that it's already included.
This is true. Obviously, I know this now,
You're paying
but
for intellectual property. Somebody had to teach or develop those concepts that you're learning that's in that book. Nowadays, it's going to be a website or a program on a computer more than a textbook. They're not buying too many textbooks anymore.
No, I mean, put it this way: when I was in college level English, I'm not a fast typer. I use a keyboard a lot now due to my job, which is something I've actually gotten a lot better at, even from in high school. If you went to the computer lab or whatever, because I was so used to writing my papers or whatever it is. I actually asked my professor. I said, "Hey, is it okay if I write my papers? Because I'm such a slow typer." And she was like, "No." Like she was like, "Absolutely not." She was like, "This has to be typed out," and it would take me pretty much a good chunk of my afternoon. Yeah.
You actually asked the teacher?
Yeah, I'm dead serious because it's not that I didn't want to type. It's just like, hey, I know what I want to say, but it's going to take me 10 times longer to do this. Obviously, like now that I think about it, it's
but
like
it's a skill that you have to learn.
Yeah, so I was shying away from learning that skill set at the time. But I would sit there and it'd take me a good chunk of my afternoon to write maybe just 3-4 pages, man, on like literally, because that's how slow I was.
And how fast do you think you could do it now?
Honestly, man, maybe a half hour.
Well, you talked about taxes and writing checks. So, nowadays, started about 2 or 3, 4 years ago, but seniors, in order to graduate, have to take a personal finance class.
Oh, I actually did not know that.
Yeah, so they started at, I'd say, within the last 5 years. So that's
Okay.
part of the graduation requirement.
I remember part of the math, I think it was, I want to say 8th grade. Part of the math was like checkbook, like how to write checks, and you never had that?
No,
I
not.
think it was
You know what?
8th grade algebra, I think.
You might. It's very possible I did that. I don't remember it,
But
but
when's
it
the
does
last
sound-
time you wrote a check?
Well, that too.
Nowadays, that's like
ancient.
antique.
Yeah, it's very ancient. I agree. It's like my mom's like, "Oh, do you have your checkbook?" It's like, "Mom, I don't need it for any reason. Like, it's still the same. I've like ripped one piece off of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
I just use it just for the routing number and the.
I mean, that's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
Now everything is accessible again on our phones. You have apps for everything. You have you have endless information at your fingertips, and then I think that's what it is since we hold that information in our hands, we feel, especially maybe students, that they have all the knowledge of what things are, and that's why they. Like you were talking about their opinions, or Jared talking about, I heard it on the podcast or Joe Rogan's podcast, so it's got to be a fact. No, you have information, but is it vetted? Is it,
I always tease the students. I would say if something happened and cell phones would just shut off, I said there'd be a huge cry throughout the school, and you hear splat, splat, kids jumping out of windows. Or something. They would not know what to do.
No, they wouldn't.
So it's an indulgence that's become an addiction, I think. So.
They say, and I could be stand corrected with this, but they say like the cell phone addiction or the scrolling and the swiping and all that, they say that level of addiction is to somebody who uses like heroin or crack cocaine or something like that.
I have no doubts that it would definitely cause them some severe anxiety if they could not put their hands on their phone.
And I'm guilty of, I know I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure we all are in some capacity. Like, it's like if I come home after work one night, I'll, get my bowl of food, whatever, go up in my room, turn on Netflix, and the first thing I do is I open up my phone, and the show that I'm really trying to watch is just background noise because I'm just scrolling and just looking at nonsense for no reason. No reason. It doesn't do me any good, but, I can't help it.
This is why you can't ever watch any shows for the show.
First of all, sir, I watched Stranger Things and you didn't.
Yeah, it just came out yesterday.
It's okay, but you're the type of person that it's like 3 a.m. It's on, you're watching.
But guess what? Everything else that I need to watch, I've watched already.
I have not.
I know.
And this
you
is
still haven't started The Boys yet.
I have not. Coach, what do you watch, man? Like, are you like? Is there like anything in particular you're a fan of? Or?
Well, you mentioned Stranger Things and The Boys, so I watched those 2 shows. Yeah.
Okay, so
great
Coach
shows.
is I know I hear The Boys is great. I know Coach is caught up, and I'm not. So therefore, the man I haven't seen in years is more caught up in television than I am. Okay,
There you go.
All right. Well, I
It's
guess
only in the summer.
it's only in the summertime. Well, yeah. Obviously, you have downtime.
Yeah, so
That's when all the stuff comes out. Most of it.
Yeah. So I tend to binge watch. I watch it all at one time.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
Yep.
So
Do you like the idea of binge watching? Because we talk about like that. Because we're big Star Wars fans.
well,
obviously.
so I know that software engineers, people who develop video games, that sort of stuff, they themselves will not allow their kids to have those video games or those tablets or whatever, because they do it in such a way that it is addictive. So if you watch Netflix, one episode will end, and within
Next
5-7 seconds, the next one rolls up.
Yeah.
So you either got to hit pause and run out to the kitchen or the bathroom, or
Yeah.
you're stuck there.
Yeah.
You're there, and you'll look up next thing you know, and this
Like,
XYZ at night.
What did I miss?
Yeah. So it's very, they understand how the brain works, and so it's very powerful. And if you're not aware, it could definitely suck you in. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, coming from, obviously, I've been a big gamer my entire life. That's my safe space, so to speak. I've gotten tremendously better about it, obviously, as I've gotten older and I have more responsibilities. But there was a time, especially after I graduated, there was a time.
So you were one of the Call of Duty addicts.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very good at COD. I play a lot of Halo. Halo's my go-to. Coach, I could sit here and talk to you about it for hours.
And he
No, you couldn't, because I don't know anything about it.
Well, you'll listen to me talk to
say. He'll tell you all about it.
And then everybody's going to tune out and it's like, all right, he's rambling, that kind of thing. But
look, there's been plenty of times I had to stop you on your Halo rants.
Dude,
well, what's amazing to me is I watch kids, they'll go on their phone, and I guess they'll go on YouTube, and they'll watch somebody else playing the game.
Yeah.
I do it.
So,
I do it now.
And they get paid for, and those, I guess they get money for it.
The big streamers get
and then this whole YouTuber influencer thing. I just never. The guy has no talent. The girl got no talent, but they film everything they do, and people watch it, and they get likes and clicks and whatever, and they getting paid for it.
It is,
and they create content off of. It's just the craziest thing in the world to me. I don't know.
We're different times, but I'll tell you what now. My GTA 5 Grand Theft Auto, if you don't know.
You delinquent.
I work from home. So
Generation 5, you said?
It's the 5th Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, installment, yeah.
Well, there's I don't know, they're working on 6 right now. But there's streamers that I watch, and like they have the city, and there's different servers, and then there's streamers that I'll watch that are, there's like little gangs in the city, and like they do crime and rob banks and all kinds of stuff. But I'll sit there and watch them between the one gang that I watch the most, CG Chain Gang, all day while I'm working.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's addicting,
and it's crazy. And this is coming from me, obviously somebody who's been a lifelong nerd, to say the least. When I was a kid, it's just like, oh, hey, you're not going to make any money off of doing this, blah, blah, blah. So it's like,
they robbed us.
Yeah, they robbed us, right? Because I could be sitting on big bucks, and you could be driving a brand new vehicle.
I can tell you, I've known kids who have stopped playing sports because they said they're going to make it big in the video game,
like streaming,
whatever, and that actually
or esports too.
Esports,
yeah,
and so. I read an article. They said it's harder to get into that elite level of esports than it is to become an NBA player.
I believe
there's so much competition out
there. You're competing against a ton of people, and I've always been, for the most part, an above-average player in whatever I play. Just because See, you can't get away from it, Coach. You're already down here. So no, but. Even I, like, you're like, yo, like, somebody's, like, really watching, not knocking Jared by any means, because I kind of do it, too, as well, but I've always been in the mindset, especially when esports were becoming more popular a little after I graduated, I'm thinking, why the hell do I want to watch somebody play when I can? Do you know what I mean? But as time has progressed, it's like, well, let me check this out. And the way I look at it is I kind of study it. It's like if I see somebody doing a certain technique, or learning something new, it's like, oh, maybe I can make that play. That kind of thing. I'm not super big into it, but it is kind of fascinating how it's blown up to the proportions. I mean, anybody can be a streamer as long as you're a decent player and you can create content and you interact with your fan base or whoever's watching.
And you actually stream.
And you stream. I did stream at one point.
Hint.
Okay. But that's all you need. But with the competition, those people that are doing it for 12, 13 hours a day straight. Coach, I'm a big nerd, man. I could sit there for a couple hours, no problem. But eventually, I'm going to want to get up and I'm going to want to move around and do something, go out or whatever the case may be, and then I'll come back to it later. But they do it day in and day out for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Even for me, at a point, I would get sick of it.
Well, in that article, they were talking about these elite level guys. Some of them were getting out of it, because it was affecting their ability to be husbands or fathers or whatever else it was. It was just eating
so much time, right? Yeah,
consuming their whole entire life.
That's why I have to, when I play, I have to play in spurts, because if I start playing and I get involved in the game, I'm on that game probably later than I should, and then everything else in the rest of my life just goes under the table.
But I think that's human nature, because I like to go fishing, right? And I always said, man, I would be in trouble if I lived near the water. If I had a house that had a dock and a boat, you would never see me. I mean, go to work, come home, I'd be out there. I went fishing the other day, last weekend. I've been thinking about it every day. I'm waiting, so I go again. So I think that's part of human nature. I think that's what's driven humans to be so successful. I mean, you think about it, every possible environment on this planet, humans have found a way, whether it be in the desert, whether it be in the Arctic, whether it be in water or in the jungle, wherever, humans found a way. They get there and they use that drive. I mean, just think about it. Thousands and thousands of years ago, why in the world would somebody get in a little canoe-like boat and paddle across the ocean, to go to Australia or to go to wherever? I mean, it's, and just the promise or the opportunity, whatever it is, people do it. So that's part of human nature, and I guess if we understand that, and the experts in marketing, they understand that, and they prey upon certain subsets within the population. They know what they're gonna like, what interests them. They're gonna market to that, and they got it. So you watch those cartoons. They have cartoon channels now, 24/7 cartoons. The kids watching it, and they're selling whatever it is. So little kid, I guarantee you, ask them what's the toy they want. They know what it is. You go watch that cartoon channel, I bet that toy commercial's on there, or that food, or whatever it is. So it's humans are easily led, put it that way. So it can be a good thing or it can be detrimental. Depends on, guess, who's doing the leading.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true.
As we see with our political situations, the same thing.
Yeah,
so.
It's pretty bad, folks.
Yeah. On that note.
So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to episode 139. Yes, 139 episodes of this here Mad Scientist Lab podcast. As always, it is RJ, the pizza guy, along with Jared, the visual mad scientist. Jared, say hello. There he is. And Coach Hill.
Goodbye,
well, I understand that. And Coach Hill, seriously, I'm speaking for Jared and myself. Thank you very much for coming over and hanging out with us, man. This is an important part of kind of what we do. This is our fun time. We try to have people come over, and obviously, I know I might be, don't think I'm blowing smoke up your ass, man. You're an awesome dude, and
quick,
I think
before we go, anything you want, like as far as the Marymount stuff, anything you want people to know, like a website or something?
Well, the school is in Arlington. It's to me, it's kind of a continuation of what I've been doing, because it has incredible diversity. It's one of the most diverse schools in the country. You have kids there from 49 states and 70-something different countries. You have all kinds of different religions that are practiced there, and they do a great job of getting kids through who are first generations to go to college. And so to me, that's what it's all about. So I just look forward to the opportunity to continue, hopefully motivating others to keep doing on, keep striving.
That's awesome, Coach. And again, thank you for coming over. Obviously, you've impacted our lives, and as well as many others in the local area, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming on, and you're always welcome to come over, man. I'll be a little more sober the next time you come over, though. Okay, I promise. I promise.
Oh, this was you not sober?
Well, I'm not drunk.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sober, if I had to be honest.
All right.
All right. So we will see you guys next week. Have a very safe 4th of July weekend. Blow up some illegal fireworks. Yeah. That sounds fun, right?
Sounds fun to me.
All right.
Thanks again, Coach, for coming through.
And don't forget, July 5th, Shooters.
Oh, yeah.
The comedy show.
Yeah, Shoot Your Shot, open mic comedy night at Shooters in Springfield. We're doing another show. We do it every other Tuesday. This week, July 5th is the next one. So continue the party from the 4th of July on into the 5th. Come get some laughs at Shooters.
All right. Awesome. All right. So we will see you guys next week. Peace. Thanks, Bill.
Audio skulls all day.
The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab. The merit scientist lab.
I'm gonna hit you so hard you won't see nothing. You haven't even tried.